He brought down the pot before anyone asked. No one noticed except the dog, who wagged his tail and waited anyway. The dining room was lit with soft yellow light. Laughter echoed from the far end of the table, where wine glasses clinked and children chased each other between folding chairs. Mr. Dean sat near the kitchen doorway, the only chair without a cushion, beside a plastic trash bin lined with crumpled paper towels. His daughter had told him there'd be dinner around 7. He came downstairs at 6:30, wearing a clean button-down and his old slacks, pressed neatly with a butter knife and steamed from the bathroom. He brought a small pot of chili, not too spicy, just like how her mother used to make it. He set it on the back burner, low heat, lid tilted to let the scent rise slow. No one mentioned it. Instead, trays of catered food were unwrapped: pasta, spring mix, shrimp with red cocktail sauce. Dean's pot was nudged to the side, later moved to the counter. When he reached for a plate, someone said, "Let's wait till everyone's had theirs." So he waited. And when everyone else had filled their plates and moved to the living room, he sat quietly in the corner, legs tucked under the table, bowl empty, hands folded. He didn't ask for chili. He never did. He just remembered what love used to smell like in that kitchen. And for the first time in 23 years, he couldn't smell it anymore. The house had settled into its usual evening rhythm. Dishes clinked in the sink, the TV murmured in the next room, and someone was laughing, though not loud enough for him to know why. Dean stood by the stove, his hands slow and sure, stirring the pot like it was something sacred. The steam rose with a soft hiss, catching the glow of the overhead light, making everything feel smaller somehow. He'd added just a pinch of smoked paprika this time, thinking maybe it would warm the room in ways the people didn't. From the living room, voices swelled again. His daughter called out something he couldn't quite catch, her voice thin and stretched like a smile held too long. He turned the burner to its lowest setting, careful not to let the chili bubble too hard. The old pot had a lid that clicked when the pressure rose, and tonight, he didn't want to be heard. But even the quiet made noise. When her boyfriend walked in, the one who always smelled like cologne and spoke like everything was temporary, Dean looked up and nodded. The man paused, sniffed the air once, then stepped back. "Man, what is that?" he said, not unkind, just too loud for such a small kitchen. His daughter appeared behind him, wine glass in hand, her earrings catching the light. "It's chili," she said. Then, with a sideways glance, "Daddy's old recipe. He makes it, sometimes." There was a beat of silence, not long, but sharp. The boyfriend chuckled. "Strong stuff. Thought maybe the stove was burning." She laughed with him. Not big, not cruel. Just enough. Enough to make the space around Dean feel thinner. He turned off the heat. "Maybe we can crack a window," her boyfriend added, waving a hand through the air. "I will," she said quickly, stepping past her father like he was just another fixture to navigate around. "It does kind of hang in the air, doesn't it?" Dean reached for the spoon resting on the stovetop. He picked it up slowly, then set it down again, aligning it with the edge of the counter. The pot was still full. He hadn't served a single bowl. The window slid open with a wooden groan. A breeze rolled in, lifting the corner of a napkin on the table. Dean watched it flutter once, then settle. No one asked him if he was hungry. No one noticed the chili had stopped steaming. And when his daughter finally turned to clear the counter, her hand brushed the pot without a word, moving it back behind the toaster. Dean wiped his hands on a towel, folded it once, twice, and laid it across the oven handle. He stood there for another moment. Still. Upright. shoes square with the tile. Then, almost imperceptibly, he lowered his shoulders and stepped away. Behind him, the pot cooled slowly, its scent fading like something no one remembered asking for. Upstairs, the bedroom stayed cool, even in summer. The blinds were always half closed, and the ceiling fan whispered in slow, uneven turns. Dean moved with the quiet rhythm of someone who no longer expected to be interrupted. He folded a light sweater, placed it on top of his suitcase, then opened the bottom drawer of the dresser, careful not to pull too far. Inside, a small lockbox sat flush against the back panel, gray and scratched at the edges. He kept the key on a string, tucked in the toe of his left shoe. He sat on the edge of the bed to remove it, fingers working steady, not rushed. The key turned without resistance. The lid opened with a soft click. No one in the house had ever asked what was inside. No one had ever needed to. A folded American flag took up half the space, worn soft at the corners. Next to it, a laminated card, VA Medical, issued in 1984. Dean ran a thumb across the name, not to check it, but to feel it. Underneath, a manila envelope held a title deed, signed years ago when the house was barely framed, before the porch swing, before the patio furniture, before anyone had started calling it hers. He looked at it for a long time, then placed it back, precisely as it was. At the bottom of the box was a photograph. It was small, creased in one corner, the kind that had lived too long in a wallet. A woman with her head tilted, laughing at something behind the camera. Dean set the photo on his thigh and stared. Not long. Just enough. Then he reached into the closet for a clean shirt. Downstairs, the sound of a microwave door slammed and someone laughed too loud at a show. He buttoned his collar slowly, skipped the top one, and checked the mirror, not for neatness, but for something else. He didn't find it. The lockbox clicked shut, the string looped back through the key, the shoe slid into place. The drawer closed gently. No sound. No sign. He stood for a while with his hand on the doorknob, not turning it, not moving. Just listening. Then he stepped out into the hallway, the faint scent of cayenne still clinging to the edge of the stairs. The pot had been turned off, but the heat lingered. A faint hiss still crept from under the lid, like something unwilling to let go. Dean stood near the stove, one hand resting on the counter's edge, the other brushing the fabric of his slacks as if dusting off something that hadn't settled yet. The kitchen was mostly quiet now. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask to be filled. In the dining room, silverware clinked gently against plates. His daughter's voice carried in soft waves, casual, pleasant, measured for guests. She didn't call for him. She didn't need to. The chairs were already full. A faint draft slipped in from the open window. It nudged the edge of a paper napkin, made the overhead light sway just enough to change the color of the room. Dean lifted the lid of the pot half an inch, checked the surface. A layer of oil had settled along the top, thin and golden. The aroma was richer now, deeper. It reminded him of winters when that same smell meant warmth. Now it just floated there. Undesired. He reached for a ladle but paused halfway, eyes following the hallway that led to the living room. No one was looking back. From behind, a voice called out. Not to him. Just a name he didn't know. Laughter followed, and then another door clicked open. Dean picked up a bowl from the dish rack. It was still damp. He wiped it dry with a sleeve. He scooped out one portion, careful not to spill, careful not to scrape. Set it down on the counter. Then another. And another. until the pot was nearly empty. He lined the bowls along the far edge, away from the sink, away from the stove. Somewhere they could be found, if someone happened to wander in hungry. He left the ladle resting inside the pot, handle turned slightly outward. He rinsed his hands at the sink, the water slow, not cold. As he dried them, he looked up at the cabinet door, hinge slightly loose, swinging forward just enough to need correction. He reached to close it, then thought better of it. Let it hang. Voices in the next room grew louder. Then dropped. A laugh cut short. The microwave beeped twice. Someone opened the fridge and shut it again. Dean folded the towel, set it precisely on the handle of the oven door. He looked back at the bowls. 4 of them. Still steaming. Still untouched. He stepped toward the back door. Not fast. Just steady. One hand on the knob, the other sliding into his pocket where the house key waited, warm from his palm. Outside, the light was different. Lower. Softer. A breeze moved across the porch, lifting the smell of chili into the air, then away, like it belonged somewhere else. The sun had dropped just far enough to throw long shadows across the porch steps. Dean sat on the top one, his knees slightly apart, elbows resting on his thighs. The key lay flat in his palm. He didn't turn it. He didn't need to. Behind him, the kitchen window glowed with the soft flicker of overhead light. He could see the edge of the countertop from where he sat. The bowls were still there. The steam had long disappeared. He adjusted his collar with one hand, then reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Cream-colored. A single line of handwriting across the front, "To whom this matters most." He placed it gently on the step beside him, aligning the edge with the worn groove in the wood. Then he picked it up again, held it against his chest for a quiet second, and slid it into the mailbox tucked beside the door. The mailbox creaked as it shut. Not loud, but enough to feel final. He stood, slow. Every movement measured. Not heavy, just deliberate. He walked down the short path, past the rose bush he'd trimmed 3 weeks ago. Past the welcome mat that still had the corner curled from where the dog used to chew it. No one came out. No one asked where he was going. At the end of the block, he turned left, then another left, making his way down toward the VA resource office on Franklin. It wasn't far. He knew the sidewalk by feel now, the cracks, the loose brick near the crosswalk, the street lamp that always took 2 seconds longer to flicker on. Inside his coat pocket was the deed. Signed. Notarized. And quietly reassigned. The building he left behind would still have a roof. Still have walls. But its name had changed. On paper. And soon, in memory too. By the time the kitchen light dimmed upstairs and his daughter went to rinse her glass, the notice was already en route. A quiet legal envelope, with no return address. Just a seal and a message. Folded neatly inside. No anger in the ink. No bitterness in the margins. Just a record of transfer. Of names shifted. Of space reclaimed. Dean reached the office just before they closed. A man at the front desk looked up, nodded once, and pushed a clipboard across the counter. Dean filled out the form without asking for help. His handwriting steady. Signature small. Outside, night had settled in. He didn't check the time. He didn't need to. He just sat on the bench across the street and waited for the lights to go off in the home that used to be his. Not out of spite. Not for satisfaction. Just to make sure the chili had cooled. All the way. The news played softly in the background, the volume turned low so the baby wouldn't wake. A local anchor spoke with that careful warmth reserved for human interest stories, the kind usually saved for after weather. On screen, a small crowd stood in front of a modest brick building with a green awning. A new sign was being unveiled: Holland's House, Veteran Resource and Community Kitchen. Her wine glass paused mid-air. The name caught her first. Then the face. Not smiling. Not posing. Just standing slightly off-center in a faded gray jacket and pressed slacks. Dean. She set the glass down without finishing the sip. The screen showed him shaking hands with a man in uniform, maybe from the mayor's office, maybe not. Then a short interview clip, Dean speaking slowly, one hand resting on the lectern, the other holding a worn photo. The subtitles helped her follow. He spoke of nourishment. Of dignity. Of making sure no one ate alone unless they chose to. His voice was the same, but steadier than she remembered. Like it had found a place to land. The segment cut to shots of the building interior. Shelves lined with canned goods, a bulletin board pinned with job postings, a long folding table set with simple bowls and spoons. Then, finally, the kitchen. Clean. Bright. The camera didn't linger, but she saw it, his old pot, sitting neatly on the back burner, lid tilted just the way he always left it. She reached for the remote and turned up the volume, just as the anchor closed the story. Mr. Hollins requested no ribbon-cutting ceremony, the woman said, with a polite smile. He just wanted the doors open before the next cold front came in. Then it faded into commercial. The room was still again. She sat back on the couch, legs tucked under, remote resting against her chest. The dishwasher hummed softly from the kitchen. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once, then stopped. On the coffee table lay the same envelope that had arrived 2 days earlier. She hadn't opened it yet. The handwriting on the front was his. Careful. Familiar. No flourish. She looked over at the window, now shut tight for the night, and thought of the smell that used to linger long after dinner was done. Cayenne. Garlic. That quiet warmth no one ever asked for but always found in the corners. Her hand hovered over the envelope, then pulled back. Not yet. She sat there in silence, eyes on the TV now blank, as if waiting for one more frame of him to appear. One more second she didn't know she needed. One more moment of someone who had been in the house, and somehow, never quite seen. The kitchen was quieter than usual. No music. No clatter. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of a wall clock she hadn't changed since last fall. The air smelled faintly of something old, not spoiled, but settled. Like spice left too long in a drawer. She moved slowly, almost carefully, placing the grocery bags one by one on the counter. Milk. Eggs. A loaf of bread she didn't remember picking up. The baby had gone down early. No guests tonight. No one coming by. Just a quiet Tuesday, and a kitchen that hadn't been used much since he left. She opened the cabinet above the stove. Reached instinctively for the cayenne, second row, left side. It tipped a little as she pulled it forward. Underneath, flat and folded twice, was a small piece of paper. Cream-colored. The corners curled just enough to show it hadn't been there long, but long enough to belong. She didn't move right away. Her hand stayed on the jar, still halfway to the counter. Her other hovered near the edge of the folded note, not yet ready to touch it. When she finally picked it up, the handwriting was unmistakable. She knew the loops, the spacing. How he never quite pressed hard enough on the R's. She sat at the kitchen table without turning on the light. Just the faint glow from the stove clock lit the paper in her hand. It read, "If you ever make chili again, go easy on the cayenne. You never liked it hot like your mama did. I kept putting it in anyway. Thought maybe you'd grow into it. But maybe it wasn't the spice that kept you away. Maybe it was me. Either way, I hope the kitchen always smells like home. Dad." She read it twice. Then again. Her thumb brushed the bottom edge of the paper, where the ink had bled just slightly. Like the pen had paused too long. Or maybe the writer had. She placed the note face down on the table. Didn't fold it. Didn't put it away. Just left it there, between her and the empty chair across from her. Outside, the wind picked up, nudging the window panes ever so slightly. She didn't close them. The cayenne jar still sat open on the counter. She capped it, turned it in her hand, then placed it gently back, second row, left side. This time, it didn't tip. The house was still. One of those late afternoon stillnesses that made everything feel further away than it was. Dishes stacked. The note unmoved. The baby monitor silent. Outside, a light breeze lifted the curtain near the kitchen window. Just one pane cracked open, not wide, but enough for the wind to remind the room someone had once liked it that way. Just enough air to keep the chili from lingering too long. Just enough for a letter to drift if it weren't pressed beneath a jar of salt. She stood there, not facing the window, but not turned from it either. The kind of stand where you forget why you stopped. Hands resting on the back of a chair, not sitting. Feet bare on cold tile. Dean's slippers were still tucked under the hallway bench. She hadn't noticed that before. Or maybe she had. Maybe she'd been stepping over them for weeks. Maybe she'd just started seeing them again. She walked to the front room without turning on any lights. The floor creaked once. She paused. Then kept going. Near the doorway, a cardboard box rested neatly, labeled Dad, Miscellaneous. Written in her handwriting. Slanted, fast. She didn't remember writing that either. She reached inside. Found the VA card first, creased, but clean. A silver coin, too not real silver, just one of those tokens given at a retirement dinner, heavy enough to stay in your pocket. And near the bottom, his old apron, the one with faded embroidery that barely read Langston's Kitchen. No one ever called him Langston. Just Dean. Just Dad. Just the man who made sure the rice was never dry. The breeze came again, shifting the curtain, just a little stronger this time. She left the box where it was. Walked back into the kitchen. Lifted the note. Folded it, once. Not twice. Slid it into the front pocket of her cardigan. She turned off the stove light. Picked up the baby from her nap. Held her longer than usual. No rush. Then, with one hand still cradling the child, she pushed the kitchen window open just a few more inches. And left it that way. Sometimes, the loudest heartbreak doesn't come from shouting, it comes from the quiet space someone used to fill. Dean never asked for much. He folded his life into smaller corners so others could stretch theirs out. And when he left, he didn't slam doors or raise voices. He just folded his apron, left a note behind the cayenne pepper, and disappeared like steam from a pot no one watched. His love didn't look like grand speeches or big sacrifices. It looked like warm meals, steady hands, and windows left open just enough. We don't always know which moment will be our last chance to say thank you or to listen more closely when someone stops speaking. Maybe it's not too late for us to notice the slippers near the door, the pan on the stove, or the way someone says nothing at all. If this story made you think about someone you haven't reached out to in a while, maybe today's the day. Do you believe silence can sometimes speak louder than apologies? Let us know in the comments. And if you felt something watching this story, please like, share, and subscribe so more stories like Dean's don't stay hidden.